All right, I think we're live. I'm not sure what all you can see. Hopefully you can see the presentation screen, but you're gonna have to confirm that with me. On the side, there'll be a right-hand side or left-hand side. I think it might be bottom left. There'll be a chat box, and you'll be able to chat in that box and let me know what you see. So let me know if you see my screen. It should say agriscaping.com, elegant edible landscaping. Welcome to Agriscaping 101. Growing food made easy, elegant, and sustainable. And there could be a little bit of a lag between the time that you're going to hear me talking and the time that you actually hear me talking. Or that's me talking and then you hearing. All right. So if everything looks good, I'm going to move forward with it. I've got Clark standing by, ready to answer any of the questions that you might have. And with those questions answered, hopefully they're going to be the right ones. And Clark is really good. He's my right-hand man here in Phoenix, Arizona. And most of what we'll be creating with you all today, because we have such a national and even in some cases international audience, we're going to be going through really an introduction to what agriscaping is and get down to some of the root aspects of agriscaping and why it's kind of needed in today's environment. And we'll just get right into that. Once we know this thing will cooperate with us. Okay, so just a couple of things about the webinar. This is a new webinar system for us, so please bear with us as we go through this. We are anticipating a number of people on the call, either online or offline. And in order to accommodate the mass amounts that were registered for the class tonight, we had to upgrade our system to an entirely new system, which I've been studying all day today and trying to figure out how to make it work well enough that you might be able to hear me first. And number two, definitely be able to see and make sure all those things are lined up at the same time. So a little bit about webinar on air. This class is being recorded. And because it's being recorded, you just need to know that there's some ways for you to communicate with us that's best. And it's usually on that right-hand side. And those features there, because you're all muted currently, you'll be able to ask your questions there. We'll be able to answer them live. I'll be able to see them right here on my screen. And hopefully that'll make it all work very well. And if you have challenges on your end with your computer, if there's some internet connection issues that might arise for you, just know that we are recording this, and you will be sent an email, likely early tomorrow morning, maybe even a little bit later tonight, that will have access to the full video recording of this presentation. We'll also be sending you the slide presentation, so don't take too much effort in trying to write down every detail that we're talking about. What I would recommend as you take notes, to take notes on the things you're inspired to do, the people that come to mind that you might want to share this with, because those are the things that are going to be active in your life, and that's the most important thing that we have and that you'll have moving forward from today. So here we go. Here's a quick overview of what we're going to talk about in a really backwards and in particular order. So I'll give you a quick intro to the art and science of agriscaping. We're going to help you identify and understand what microclimates are and how they exist in today's shrinking backyards. We'll talk about transforming grass into edible gardens, which for those of us that live in areas where Bermuda grass is the mainstay grass or any of these more invasive grasses, it's a pretty important component to make sure that you can then transform a grass into a garden and not have it re-arise as grass. We'll also talk about some sustainability comparisons with other traditional models that are out there. And then we'll talk about mastering the art of edibles in your own yard and some next steps that we'll recommend to you, all in 60 minutes or less. So if you're ready, we're getting started right now. All right, so we're into growing food made easy. And to do that, first you ought to look at one major component in life today, that this is the first time in history where more people live in cities than live in the country on or near farms. 51%. So just last year we tipped the scale, and now we're trending more urban. So here we are right in this location here, and you'll see there's still a ways to go, and that trend will continue into the foreseeable future, that will become more dense as a population. And as we get more dense, there's a myriad of challenges that we are now facing. And food is only one of them. Now, because of that unprecedented growth into cities, there's also been this odd, unprecedented growth for locally grown produce. You guys have probably noticed that in your own grocery stores. Even massive chain grocery stores are starting to have the locally produced stuff. Now, I don't know about you guys, but here in Arizona, locally grown, or what's considered locally grown, can travel as far as 500 miles and still be considered local. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel very fresh after being in a car for about 500 miles. And I certainly don't feel very fresh if I'm packed into a very small container with a bunch of other people like myself. We wouldn't get along so well. So that demand for locally grown has really forced a lot of people to go where we know the best food is grown. And according to the National Gardening Association, there's been a 38% increase since 2008 for people growing food at home. So edible right now is bigger than ever. Right now, 3 out of 5 people indicate that edible is the way they'd like to go. 3 out of 5 are highly interested in growing their own food. Now, the challenge is that when people are going online to get information, what they often end up with is growing more frustration than they do food, because of all the information that's out there and all the myriad of climates and microclimates and people that we're growing in, that information is so diverse that as we search for it, we don't actually get the information that's best fit for our yard, our growing conditions, and certainly not helpful for our shrinking growing conditions and our shrinking availability of growing space of full sun, which is where we're all taught we need to grow. And we also have, combined with that, this growing retirement of a professional workforce that knew how to grow. And if you're like me, you had a grandpa that might have been in farming. You know, your father or your parents might not have been, but your grandparents might have been, or your great-grandparents might have been. And they actually grew up in an era that they were belittled by going the way of the organic, because there were so many great, pesticide options and great chemical options available. It made it really impossible for people to feel good about growing organically, because apparently there were all these more efficient ways to grow. And so even those that know how to grow organic are few and far between. It's an era that we've kind of skipped a generation, if not 2 generations, of information on how to really grow good, locally grown, homegrown produce. So this is what people usually end up with. They end up with yards that are ugly, hard to manage, void of any style or taste. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, yards like this one, this is in Atlanta, Georgia, and these guys ended up being sanctioned by their city, told them must go. They fined them. They went after them and forced them to then remove all their garden in the front yard. And that's because what we do know, and what we have known up until now, has been a lot of information about farming conditions and how to grow in rows. And if you look in the 60s and 70s, there was the square foot gardening movement that kind of came out. And then that made it a little more efficient for growing in a yard, but was still in boxes and not usually in the taste palette that your cities were really shooting for. I mean, you head up into Scottsdale and they've got a particular palette here in Scottsdale, Arizona, on what they want a yard to look like. And so in order for us to start growing into landscapes, we have to make it look a little better. So we made it a little simpler for people. We made a new app that we've been developing, and it's a personal garden coach right in your pocket. We made it easy. And the way we made it easy is to make it so it's really custom fit to where you grow. A simple online tool. You can grow indoors, outdoors, full sun, full shade, or in partial sun, or partial shade. And it has some new microclimate technology that we've reclassified pretty much all the growing conditions for pretty much every edible out there, and set them up and allocated them in a way that fits to a zip code orientation for timelines of when you grow these things. So with My Agriscape Pro, you'll know exactly what to plant, when to plant it, when to care for it, how to care for it, when to harvest it, all fit for your yard in a fun, easy to manage way. Here's some sneak peeks at what the app looks like. And you'll see right here in the bottom left-hand corner of one of the main pages of here on Ryan's planting calendar, it has an Ask a Pro feature, and that's one major component that makes this whole thing work. See, all of our data that's in the system is not based on algorithms. It's not a math-based equation. It's based on real people in your area growing real food. And as you might have seen our press release a little bit about a week ago, we've increased to about 96 cities across the country and 5 countries. And so those are places where registered pros are installed in that space. They are starting to help us input data. They're starting to learn the way of agriscaping. They're starting to learn the nuances of growing in these microclimates because of the shrinking yards that we have access to. Then it's a new way to grow and a new way to get all access to everything. Now I was just notified that everybody was looking at Clark's face for the last 5 minutes. And I apologize for that. So hopefully everybody can see that now. Now I'm going to switch back over. I'm going to go and flip back through a few more of these slides. So apparently we had Clark as the master teacher. And I apologize for that. So here's some of the pictures of what we're looking at on what the app does and how it works. And well, let's just do a little poll real quick. Who'd like me to start over? I'll actually put that little poll in the questionnaire, and we'll just see who'd like me to start over. And I'll just start from the beginning again, if that's what you'd like to do. So look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a thing about starting over. And you let me know what you think. All right, so there should be a poll in the upper right-hand corner. So this is us also still testing out the system and hopefully being able to create some more interactivity between you and us at the moment. So if you see the poll in the upper right, please vote on that. We'll give another 2 minutes for people to kind of test a little vote on that. We're tied up 1-1 right now. All right, we got 2 to 2, 3 to 2, no. So this is kind of fun to watch on this side. You can kind of see this line jumping all around, and we can continue forward or we can roll back. Either way, you're going to have access to the recording, which will talk and speak through it all. We'll have other recordings that we'll be able to give you access to as well. We definitely want to make sure that your experience and what you're getting is what you came for, and hopefully be able to get into the deeper elements of today's class before we finish our time together today. All right, with a meager percentage of votes, I don't know if you guys can see it. We're basically 6-1 to start over with a yes. And I'll do a brief overview of the things as we go through the slides so you can see them. And that prompted a few more people to vote. All right, so we're pretty much even on the yes, no. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the poll right now. And I'm going to swing through a couple of the slides so you can kind of see what those things are. The pieces that we might have missed, and then I'm going to continue on. So it's going to be a brief overview of what's going on in the world today. So here it is right here. New times, 51% of us are now living in cities instead of the farms. We're growing on a massive trend towards more urbanization. And with that urbanization, we don't have access to the full sun like we used to. And so people are looking more for the locally grown. It's unprecedented, the demand that's been growing for everybody. There's a National Gardening Association says it's bigger than ever. And if you look at this right here, there's actually 47% of the country are at least attempting to grow food right now in the United States. 47%, but they say that there's 60% that are highly interested in growing their own food if they were given the right information and given the right opportunity to do so. Now, in our own polls, we actually found in a room of even very wealthy, well-to-do people that we asked them if they want to grow food at home. We actually had a smaller percentage. So they're like, well, I don't want to do it if I have to do it myself. But then we said, well, what if someone could do it for you? And we had 85% of the room raise their hands totally into it. And the ones that didn't had a couple questions, and then we ended up with 90% of the room. The other 10%, they basically said, well, I don't really live in any one place for any length of time, so I don't know if that would be even useful. So 90% of the people really would do it if someone else could take care of it for them, just like they already have with their landscape maintenance crews that they all, and many of us, hope to someday have perhaps in our own yard. But that's something that we're working on. So that growing frustration causes some challenges, mainly because we have no backup because of the retiring professional support team. Go to any big box retail garden center, and you'll find that the information that they have access to is dwindling on a rapid scale. And helping you in your yard is even harder to do. A lot of them will go to Google and they'll find information and give you misinformation, not because they're trying to be malicious. It's just that they don't know that the information they're looking at doesn't really apply to their area. I mean, if you go online, here in Arizona, we know that on the back of seed packets is the worst information to follow, because that the map for the country on the climate zone map, the USDA climate zone map, literally, if you go to the USDA website and you look at the climate zone map at the fine print underneath it, it literally says that the system fails west of Laredo, Texas. And there's a whole lot of populace living west of Laredo, Texas. If it still worked, then Tucson, Arizona, a very hot spot, would have the same climate zone as Portland, Oregon. And obviously that's not the case. There's certainly a huge difference in the climates in those two areas, and thereby we don't really like to follow those things. So with that misinformation, as well as the fact that we're living in smaller spaces and we're not growing in the same type of area that we had before, we've got some major issues. All right. So we created an app, and the app really, like we were talking about, really helps bring that personal garden coach right in your pocket. Now, when we took it over to a Lowe's recently, we actually had a 60% buy-in of all the pros that were then there. They wanted the app for themselves so they could help their clients more. And as we talked to their managers, this is actually becoming something that you may end up finding that the biggest power tool that they have when it comes to edibles is going to be My Agriscape Pro right in their pocket. But you can be empowered even before they will be, because those kind of organizations always take a little bit longer, and put that microclimate technology right in your pocket. So here's a peek of that again. Now, the tool itself always gives you the option to be able to hire a pro, and it'll give you access to whoever the local pro is that's closest to you. It gives you plant care information, local weather data. It'll also give you a lot of updates on what you need to be doing. So for instance, it shows right there, water tomatoes. Now, we've upgraded even from this design screen that I'm showing you here. There's actually another spot right under here that for the things that you might be harvesting in a given time, it'll actually give you some recommended recipes that will also fit. So you can get that seasonal recipe opportunity right from your phone based on the seasonal things that are harvesting in your garden. You input them in, you input the amounts that you have, the number of plants that you planted at the proper time, and it will literally give you the whole breakdown of what to do to optimize your garden with the minimum amount of effort. Pretty cool, huh? So it's a system so easy that a kid can do it. Just like my son Caleb, he's 6 years old, and he helps run a good majority of our yard. Here's some pictures from my garden here in Arizona, and even though it's hot, we can still grow a lot of cool stuff. We have a lot of fun ways that we like to grow things in our backyard. And many of you might notice that we still have grass. Now, if you look closely, this grass right here isn't your typical grass. This grass is actually a dichondra. It's actually somewhat in the peanut family. It is have an edible leaf to it. And then underneath our trampoline, which you can kind of see right over here, this is where our trampoline hides. It's an in-ground trampoline. But if you go down a secret set of stairs that we have off the backside, you actually find this. This is a subterranean garden. What we did is we created a entirely new climate zone. It really is a tropical climate zone, high in humidity. It never freezes in there. We'll get down to below 17 degrees in the wintertime here in the Phoenix area. And things above the ground are going to be freezing like crazy. Where here, underneath my trampoline, it has never gone below 36 degrees. And so we're able to grow tropicals, just like this nice dwarf red banana that we have there. We can grow that. We can grow jasmine year-round. We can grow a lot of other things. Even the taro root is actually starting to thrive under there. And so there's a lot of cool things that you can do, even indoors. So we have maps within the system and helping you show how to grow indoors. This has a combination of two things. It's a type of vining spinach, actually three things. We got the ginger root growing out the back, and we've got some purple peppers. It's a purple leafed, purple sweet pepper that we have growing in the front there. Really kind of ornamental thing, and it's amazing what you can do in just a couple square feet. Actually, that's only about 18 inches across. This sits in my office. I'm looking at it right now. So with agriscaping.com, you can have your beautiful yard and eat it too, just like this yard does. This creates a lot of interest as well as it creates a lot of production. These are edible flowers. Daylilies are a delectable edible. It's one of my wife's favorite edible flowers. And all these pathways and grass zones actually help move the water to our swells where we can get some deep growth water that can access, that basically just drives the water over. And we have some nice water catchment. So we can take permaculture principles, we can integrate them with nice, elegant design and well-engineered spaces and turn it into a living paradise that grows an entire family and grows a lot amount of food. So yes, you can do this anywhere. Because if you can grow indoors and you try to keep the climate to a space that you actually can enjoy, like even our fellow people and our students up in Alaska, they find that they can grow quite a bit of stuff up there once they learn how to grow indoors, and when they can maximize their growth outdoors in the summertime because they have sun day in and day out. So even in 115 Fahrenheit heat, these are the stuff that we're planting outdoors right now. And you can see it's a pretty good list. Now, all this stuff is made possible because of our ability to grow in microclimates. I mean, things that we love growing this time of year are these popcorns, the ornamental popcorns. We love the strawberry popcorns. They look amazing. We get our pumpkins growing right now, so we have them for Thanksgiving. The Love Lies Bleeding Amaranth. You can see that right here, this nice, cool red plant. You can actually eat the leaves on this, and anything really in the amaranth family. So even celosias are edible. You just might want to taste them first. It's a great summer plant to be growing. Now here's a featured edible. I wanted to show you this. This is the one that's growing inside my house, but we also can grow them outside, and they do very well in the heat and in the more of a tropical kind of climate. They typically die off in the wintertime, but this is a secret summer salad green for all of us that might live in a place that greens don't typically grow so well in the summer because it gets a little too hot. A lot of value to it. Vitamin C, a lot of nutrients. Here's a picture of one I just took today, actually in one of my client yards. Went in their backyard, and I wanted to show a beautiful picture of what this beautiful red vine looks like. They have this trellised up about, I think it's grown up about 8 feet. We just started growing it about 2 months ago, and so it's already up 8 feet and filling in the trellis beautifully. These leaves can easily be pinched off, thrown in salads, thrown in smoothies. Wonderful, delectable plant. And for microclimates, these are some other things that we're still growing right now. So I'm planting carrots, cucumbers, greens, strawberries, broccoli, and tomatoes right now, even though, according to everyone, I'm not supposed to be able to do that right now because it's too darn hot here in Arizona. But microclimates are the key. So here's a space. So that same yard that we're looking at right there, if you look on the backside of this same little hill, that's actually what's going right here. I've got strawberries growing all back inside here in a little microclimate that we created with the help of the trees and as well as the help of the house. So here's a zoom in on where our strawberries are growing right now. This is the Loran variety, and we've found that to be a great one for our desert Southwest climate. Can handle the heat, but also makes a beautiful ground cover and gives us a nice strawberry year-round, literally always fruiting year-round. So let's expand your harvest by looking a little deeper, looking at Agriscaping HD, and that's what this is. This is our H diagram, so you can increase the density and the location by which you grow. This is how we help ourselves figure out where the microclimates exist, and this is how we've classified them. So we've classified them A through F. Now this H border right here represents any border that might be on your property. So this could be your house, and this is your sun. So if you're on the northern, in the northern hemisphere, north is this direction, because that's where the sun travels. Now, if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. North is actually on the south side, and so, north is north is on the south side. The sun travels on the north end of your property. So depending on where you're at, this map, this HD diagram, this Agriscaping HD will work for you, and it's all based on sun orientation. And so right here in the B zone, this B zone is your typical full sun environment. This is what all farming data is based on. This is what pretty much all the information that has available to you on the back of packages is recommending that you plant in. So just 1 out of 6 of these locations that we give you with the My Agriscape Pro. So let's get into detail on each of these. So if it's east to west, as we showed here, this is basically how it works. Everyone has the sun rise in the east, set in the west, unless I'm mistaken. And these letters represent those different microclimates. The A microclimate is the microclimate that gets a morning sun and an afternoon shade. It's great for herbs and heat-sensitive type things. So morning sun, afternoon shade, and that shade is created because there's some type of barrier there. Now, zone B is that morning and afternoon sun. It gets your traditional growing zone. It's really might have a wall to its furthest end away from the sun. It's zone B. It's the full sun zone. Zone C is kind of your baking zone. This is where we roast marshmallows here in Arizona, because in that late afternoon, we get some crazy heat. And this only gets that crazy heat. So this is a morning shade, afternoon sun scenario. That's a zone C. Now, zone D is in a peculiar little space. As that sun travels around, it actually wraps around oftentimes in the summertime and actually gives a little bit of heat in the late afternoon, but usually only for a very short period of time. Now, for each of us, it might be a little different depending on the latitude that we might live at on planet Earth. But the cool part is my Agriscape Pro accommodates for that. Again, it's proof from the pudding. It's proof from the people that are growing and professionally growing where you live, and that's what the whole system is based on. So the more pros we get in an area, the smarter the system gets. The more you use the system and report back on it, the smarter the system gets. So the longer you're with my Agriscape Pro, the smarter the system is for you, because it learns from you. When you plant a new plant, it'll ask you, well, what did you plant in this area before? When you rip out another plant, it'll say, okay, how did it do? How was your harvest? You can rate your harvest. You can also rate your pros and the data that they input. So over a long period of time, this system will be the ultimate system out there for growing food at home, indoors or outdoors, full sun or full shade. The D zone, again, it gets mostly shade because it gets morning shade, it gets midday shade, it gets a little bit of sun late afternoon, a lot of just ambient light, but it's a good place in the heat of the summer to grow greens. E zone, that's another one, great for strawberries here in the desert Southwest. It's a space that we find can grow a lot of greens as well. It gets some ambient light. This might be a space right underneath the tree that has a lot of filtered light coming through it. So the E zone is your filtered light zone for you. And the F zone, that's a full shade scenario. Even in that space, you can still grow some cool stuff. It's great for summer greens, edible ferns, strawberry, guava. That's one of the best producers of fruit in a shade scenario that we've ever found. So here's an example. Here in an E zone, like we talked about with that H diagram, that E zone was right there in the top. It's in mostly shade, gets a little bit of filtered light. Now, this is a variety of kale, wonderful variety of kale, and it's 115 today. And right next to it, about 6 feet away, is it's a location that's actually a C zone. And that C zone, you can see that this has already become a little bit bitter, because kale, as it grows, if it starts to bolt, all the power goes to the new flower buds that are starting to grow on the top of this thing. And those flower buds then draw a lot of the moisture out of the leaves, increasing the bitterness of all the leaves. Not the most delectable thing to eat. And many of you might say kale was never very good to eat, but I might disagree, especially this variety. When we grow it nice and lush, have it get it some good water, and get it in the right microclimate, it actually is quite sweet. My favorite time of year to eat kale, though, is definitely in the winter, when the temperatures get a little cold. A little bit of freeze and frost actually goes a long way for the brassicas, because it forces them to actually sweeten up. So let's get into transforming your grass into an edible garden. Here's what my backyard looked like when I bought my house. And here's what it looks like today. And you can see we've already got a few microclimates already in play. We're growing broccoli and cauliflower in some E zones here that otherwise wouldn't be growing this time of year. But as you can see right here, this little corner right there is actually this corner of concrete right there. So you can see it was all grass. And so we ripped out all this grass, actually put in raised beds in a variety of locations. Here's some other parts. So this is looking from my patio back out to my neighbor in the back's house. And here's what it looks like basically today. And so you can see a lot of grass we cut out, and we put in some more raised beds. We actually cut out a bunch of grass in this whole section here. Pretty much from here over was all grass that we've now turned into beds, and here back we've turned into beds. So you can see there's a lot of grass that we had to rip out and try to mitigate, because we left some of it to grow some kids. Kids grow pretty good on grass. So here's the 7 steps to transforming grass into an edible garden. And if you skip any of these, you just won't have as high a success rate. We've seen many people out there doing a lot of different methods, whether it be sheet mulching and things. But when it comes to the nasty Bermuda grass that we have, and some people might have the common Bermuda that we have here that has a set of stolons that's only about 2 inches down. And then there's another set on a long spindly thing that's really thick, about the width of a pencil, that's about 18 inches down. That becomes a bigger problem. So 7 steps. First step, mow it. Now that might sound obvious. You mow it. You mow it because of what it does to the plant, what it does to cause the plant to kind of restrict its growth. It kind of retracts its feet, if you would. You know, it kind of pulls itself up. But then I water it because I'm also wanting it to continue to pull those roots up into the soil, up higher in the soil structure a little bit. And I'm only going to water it to about 2 inches deep. And normally, under normal conditions, I would actually water my grass. So I want to make sure I'm at least 8 inches deep. But in this case, I'm going to water it just 2 inches deep. Then I'm going to cut it. And what I mean by cutting it in this case is actually cutting the sod out. So I'm going to go 2 to 3 inches undercut of where my grass is. So let's say here's my grass, and that's the layer of my grass, and then I've got all my roots, my thatch level, and I've got my root layer. So I'm going to go down as far as I can with my sod cutter if I've got one, and 3 inches is about where most sod cutters max out. Then I'm going to roll it up, just like my mother is showing us here. This is in the same spot that we were showing you earlier. I got my chickens out there foraging for all the worms that were coming up out of the grass. So we mowed it, we watered it, we cut it, and then we rolled it up. Now, each of these rolls, when you have it that thick and you've watered it recently, each of these rolls weighed about 80 pounds. So it can be very heavy, and these were only 3 foot long chunks. So every 3 feet we would cut it off, and then we'd roll that up. Then the next step, one of the most critical steps in getting rid of a Bermuda grass, is to flame treat it. Now, we just grabbed a typical flamethrower that you use on tar roofs or roofing, and we use those things to just flame all these little stolons. We want to take all those little white roots and we want to superheat them to as hot as we can get them. So we crank that thing on, we flame treat that entire area where we've just rolled out and moved away all that sod. And then we're going to put 2 layers of cardboard on top of that. Now, some people say, well, just 1 layer should be fine. Well, it's not. Not for the type of Bermuda grass we typically have here. But 2 layers of cardboard, and then you put a rich soil blend on top. So you can see this hill, this was all grass. The grass went all the way out to this curb right here. So all this was grass. We mounded up a good amount of soil on top of that. And then we actually put underneath this, we actually have a subterranean watering system. So underneath here, this is some other little tricks of the trade, I guess you could say. We have a perforated pipe with a little chimney spout on one end of it, and it's about 1 foot down underneath this hill. And what we end up doing is that we fill that up about once a week, that cavity, and it deep waters everything from the root base up. So it's kind of a wicking bed. It wicks that water out. It dramatically decreases the amount of water we need to use, rather than the spray that you can kind of see in the background back in here. So that spray watering evaporates like crazy and doesn't really work so well, especially for your edibles, because most of the water that we have is so filled with chemicals and other things that it causes some major problems for our plants. And so we don't want to necessarily spray that on there without maybe even a little filtration, or maybe even going through pond water first. Anyway, so about raised beds, if you're doing raised beds over that same space, this actually is the area, what we converted it to. There's that little corner right there. That is right there. And so we actually put in some raised beds. And underneath those raised beds, we actually created some wicking beds. And we use these pathways. And underneath these pathways, we didn't put the cardboard. What we did instead is we actually put in a landscape fabric, so not plastic. We put a fabric so the soil can still breathe, still percolate water. We put the landscape fabric. And then around these raised beds, along this edge here, we actually cut down even further, put in another perforated pipe, and we use the pathways as water catchment. So we actually use what's underneath all this pea gravel is an arced path. So we literally arced the path underneath the pea gravel. The pea gravel fits in about here. And so the water literally rolls down into our perforated pipe, and then we have all this really nice soil that we've cultivated on the other side that wicks up the water into the beds. And that's how we set up our in-ground watering beds. This is also a great technique if you have an irrigated property, doing subterranean watering systems for irrigation, doing raised beds so that your seeds don't get washed away with your irrigation. So different techniques that we like to use in agriscaping, like we teach, to be able to integrate more growing beds, more optimal growing conditions, easier management of your growing beds, easier ways to cycle through your edibles, whether it be spring, summer, or fall, finding ways of how you can rotate those beds easily and effectively. Here's another image kind of coming from a different angle so you can kind of see how those beds are, and where those pipes are underneath the ground are literally another 8 inches down, and then this is all swelled down to then catch all that water that goes underneath there. So pretty cool technique. And then you can see some of our cauliflower growing right here in 110-degree heat, which it shouldn't be able to do, but because of the microclimate we put it in, it's effective. You can also see a lot of our artichoke flowers over here growing amazingly well. Also, another really cool microclimates. We have a lot of growing stuff under here. These are all starts that we have growing underneath the plants. And so we create layers, create ways of growing things and optimizing our efficiencies. Now, agriscaping doesn't need to look terrible, obviously. And we have a number of design families that I'm just going to share with you right now. What's your style? Let's look at a few. We got the traditional English garden, not gardens. Here's some other views of maybe a French country look that you might like. These are all edible, by the way. We got more of the English cottage look, the yard that grows itself, as they say. This is kind of the food forest look. Or you might be a little bit more like me, a little bit contemporary Tuscan. So this is a piece of my backyard. This is over the side we call our pharmacy, F-A-R-M, our medicinal area. We got a lot of new growing beds that we just put in. This is my front yard, a little more of that same kind of contemporary Tuscan look with a lot of edible dianthus flowers. These are some wonderful flowers, and some pansies, some more cabbages, Swiss chards, all in that space right there. This is the other angle from it. Or you can go totally contemporary and do things like this. Now, this is 100% edible, and it's a very beautiful garden. You can see some marjoram we have right here, some bib lettuces. We got some brassica family stuff. We got some red Japanese mustard there. We got some dinosaur kale there. See this nice big artichoke leaf that's hanging out over on this side. Got all your herbs that you might want to have. You've got your oreganos. We've got our thymes. I mean, it's a beautiful way to dress up your yard and do it in a very efficient and effective way. Or you might bring it inside like we did. This is actually an aquaponics bed that we created and went a little Japanese theme with it. And we use this aquaponics primarily to grow things like purslane. This is purslane right here. And then a variety of other things that we then grow as starts. We actually have Malabar spinach starts that are growing in there, as well as Jules Oval Par, which is a nice spinach substitute that we love to grow. And these can all grow outside. And this is just after a week of growing in that same spot. So you can see here's a week ago and here's today. And you can see all the growth. This is actually sweet potato slips. So we started our sweet potato slips right in our aquaponics bed. And underneath this is a large tank. I should have taken a picture of that. And there's 64 fish swimming around in that tank. And they're actually then what's feeding all these plants. Kind of cool. So to compare agriscaping with other traditional landscaping methods, agriscaping really is the only sustainable form, truly sustainable form of landscaping. Your traditional yard does what every traditional yard does. It's a place where money's spent, water's used, waste goes to landfills. It's a very consumptive system that we've kind of become a habit to. And this is the kind of system that when you lose your job, as we all know, when someone loses their job and times are tough, the traditional yard really starts to eat at people. And you can see that it eats at them because it's dying. And they have to let it kind of die because they can't afford to even work on it. They let the water go. They let everything go. But an agriscape is another curious type of yard. It's a place where you can literally make money. You can harvest water. You can harvest stuff and take it to market. You can be productive with an agriscape. It's something that when you lose your job, your yard might actually get better, as mine did. And that's the thing to look at. It's looking at agriscaping as a way to go from consumptive to productive, to really use the money more wisely. And here's another way to look at the comparison between an initial investment. If like apples we have here, $10,000 are invested into 2 properties. And let's just assume that you don't want to maintain the property at all. You want to hire somebody to do it for you. Now, an agriscape does cost more per month to maintain, as you can probably guess. But that can produce a $10,000 installed yard at $250 a month with maintenance fees, will produce at least $250 in harvest for the family. It will also likely decrease your traditional water bill because of the way that we optimize water usage. Because with agriscaping, we like to use gray water sources also. We like to recycle water on site as best as we can. We teach our pros how to really assess a property and get down to the details, find out exactly what a yard can produce with the water that's already being produced on site. Because I don't know about you guys, there's, anytime I've got my water on in the shower, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you turn it on first and you let it just kind of flow until it kind of gets to the temperature you want, whether it be a little warmer or maybe a little colder in the case that we have oftentimes here in Phoenix area, where the water literally coming out of the tap is already warm. And so we might want it a little get cooler. So we were sitting there waiting, and all that water is going down the drain, right down into the sewer, and then back into the city sewer system to be recycled into a long-term system. Now, think of that same system. We tapped into a tub, a shower, and 2 sinks. And that water that we just use on a regular basis, me, my wife, and 4 kids, that regular water usage produces enough water to grow about 10,000 plant units a day. And that amount of water, obviously, we've now integrated into our yard. We've integrated it in such a way that it's both conducive to growing habits, growing things that we love to eat, and now we're able to partake of that. Now, we do have to think about different types of soaps and stuff like that, but only a little bit. Most of the really bad stuff has been outlawed, and there's a lot of great options out there. Goat-type soaps. There's company called Oasis that has a lot of organic biodegradable soaps that are really good soaps. I really love them. They actually look amazing too. You can get this nice hand soap that looks like a crystal, and it's really an amazing soap. I really enjoy it. So there's a lot of cool benefits of that, but you can see the difference. As we go down the list, landfill fees are just one of the expenses that often your landscaper will throw at you after the fact that they've already, worked your yard. Then there also, you've got obviously the monthly cash flow is now a negative $177, where when we combine this with Utopian Harvest, one of our partners in integrating the excess produce, and that could be food or it could be textiles, that could be integrated right into your local economy and produce income for your family. So that income then produces a positive net cash flow, and over time, a positive return on your investment, making no changes to your house, just changes to the yard. So here's a typical lot. It goes way beyond ordinary. It's a 7,200 square foot lot. Now this is pretty traditional in our today's format of yards, and you can see the house takes up the majority of the yard. Now this yard is designed to feed 38 people on just 1/20th of an acre of space. Now that's about a $24,000 a year annual, it's an annual market value of production that it's growing. It has 150 linear feet of vertical beds. That's actually what's right here against the wall. The sun on this property is down here. And so you can see this is that's a big time bee zone right there. And we created some microclimates with the growth of all these fruit trees. Those fruit trees help expand the amount of things that they can grow, even in the heat of the summer. And then in the winter, a lot of these lose their leaves, and we can actually expand some things there. They've also got a subterranean garden underneath their trampoline. So it's got the trampoline, a roasting pit, racetrack, adventure paths, beauty galore. And here's a few pictures of that exact yard. And you can see the abundance of growth. This picture was actually taken in the winter before this peach tree became massively covered in flowers, and this fig tree right behind it became covered in its leaves. Very productive, both the fig and the peach tree. And this yard in particular, all above here, this is actually all onion all across the top there. They had a huge crop of onions, and it looked quite amazing with all these onion grasses growing up through the early part of spring and summer. We've had a lot of cool grasses growing up right off the top of those beds. Really cool way to grow stuff. Now here's how it works. With agriscaping, it all starts with an assessment. And the reason we start as an assessment is because you really want to know what your yard is worth. What productive potential do you have? And then we shift into design. And agriscaping truly is a designed science. It's a design thing. It's an elegant integration of art and engineering. And in order to make it truly efficient and easy to manage, because you can certainly design a yard that's hard to manage, it needs to be designed in a way that's fitting with agriscaping technologies. Because without it being designed correctly, it'll become a dramatic headache, because it's all about creating the flow, how everything works together, how everything between watering systems, sun orientations, as well as management flow and workflow processes, in order to make sure that you're not taking any more steps than you need to take. And then for our landscaping crews, once it's designed by a true certified agriscaper, it can be then handed over to a certified agriscaping crew, and they'll quickly be able to jump in and manage your property without additional expenses. Then comes the install process, which all of us recognize needs to happen. Unless you install it, it's not going to happen. You got to make the change. And then one key component to the whole agriscaping system is a system of support. Without a system of support, we can be alone or isolated. But what we've created is a pro system of support, a growing pro system of support, and hopefully you might be a part of that in our near future. Now, each of these are done by certified people. We have certification levels for all of this, as well as certified people that can go out and assess properties, maintain properties. And it all really starts with an educator in your local area. That educator will help attract a lot of the business, as well as help build that network and really help create the information pathways that help improve the databases for the system where you live. So those key technologies that our pros all have access to is the gray water sourcing, rainwater sourcing, all the calculators to figure out how to best optimize your yard, microclimate, household consumption data. We know how to ask the right questions to figure out how to help you with even your health goals. We find that agriscapers are being revered or included in discussions about health. And we really are part of the health team for each family that we work with. We have great stories throughout our community of people that are really healing themselves. It's their own health insurance policy. If their kids are going to have to be working in their yard, if they're going to have to sweat and toil over their and labor in their yard, it might as well be doing something for them, not them just doing something for the yard. I mean, that's the real question, right? You do a lot for your yard, but what's your yard doing for you? What's that plant that you've been putting all that time and effort into it? What does it really give you back in return? Guaranteed there's a pretty, edible, or at least productive plant in a pallet that can work in your area that would match the beauty and elegance of whatever plant you might have. Now, I can argue that irises aren't edible, and that's true. And I do have a few of those, but those things are productive. And those things sell well in the local economy when you got a beautiful variety of irises. But we also go with edible flowers, herbs, all those kind of things as well. So microclimate design, amending soil, knowing what to do where you live in order to optimize your growing conditions, because it all starts with the soil. It's not the seeds. It's not the plant so much. It's really the soil. You got to grow your soil first, because soil is it's a living organism. Very intricate component to making an agriscape work and make it easy for you. Productive pets, pest prevention and planning, all these things are what our certified agriscapers are trained to do. So we've had a lot of traction. You've probably even seen some things. Well over 18,000. I think we're well over 19,000 people online. And we're educating in 50 plus schools just here in Arizona. But the cooler part that's happened over the last 2 weeks is we're now in 96 cities. And that's 26 states. But we need more cities. We need more pros. We've got growing partnerships both here in Arizona and across the country. One of our favorite ones that I love to share with everybody is this one, the American Society of Landscape Architects. Now, for all the sustainable methods that are out there, most often are they shunned by these organizations that are really out to make things look beautiful. Home builders, they often shun even the thought of putting a garden in someone's front yard. Contractors associations, these are all people that we partner with and are actually creating curriculums to help them integrate agriscaping into their offerings and integrating that into what landscape architects can do nowadays. So here's a cool part too. VIP Homes, it was the first home builder to take agriscaping on, and now it's available. It'll be available to homeowners as they buy their houses to be built for them. They can go into the design center and have agriscaping as an option in their neighborhood right out of the gate. There's also been a lot of movement this year across the country in a variety of places. I'll be on the news again this weekend, apparently, and it seems like I have an interview a day. More people asking across the country, finding out what we're doing with agriscaping and how we're making a difference. And the cool part is they'll ask us, well, hey, give us a client, and I'll send them to a client. And our clients love to talk about the beautiful edible gardens that they have, just like you will be. So if you like what we're up to, we want to give you that opportunity to join us if you'd like. And on the upper right-hand corner, you'll be able to see an offer that we have for you. There it is, or it should be showing up now, where you can get the app, you can join the next mastery course if you'd like, or you can go pro with us. Because this opportunity that we have today is to get into Agriscaping Mastery Course. That's what we recommend you do. If you're wanting to grow for yourself, those that go through the Mastery Course, and this includes all of our pros have to go through this level themselves. You'll be mastering the process of agriscaping and creating for yourself a landscape that can pay for itself. Reduce your utility bills, increase income, make a more affordable, healthier, accessible fresh food option for you and your family and maybe even your entire neighborhood. Perhaps you can become like some of our clients and be able to start selling to the local food economy and maybe even retire off of it. We've had that happen, and it's not far from possible when you look at the price of food these days and you look at what we can do in each square foot. Now, this is something you might want to take note of so you can go and do your own assessment in your own yard today. Look at the space that you have. Figure out how many square feet you'd be willing to dedicate to growing food. Now, you take that number of square feet and you multiply it by 10. Now, that number right there, $10 a year per square foot per year, is the average that an agriscape can grow. So if I've got 1,000 square feet of space that I'd like to commit to agriscaping, you get that dialed in, it'll produce on average $10 a year per square foot. So it would produce 1,000 square feet converts to $10,000 a year in production for you. Now, you can either eat that yourself, and that's a lot of food to eat, I'll just say that. I mean, if you're spending $4,000 a month on food for yourself, or $4,000 a year on food for yourself, that is quite a bit of food. So $10,000 a year, probably more than you yourself can eat. That's a good amount for about 2 people. That's kind of how I look at it. Maybe even 3, maybe even 4, depending on what you're growing and what your palate for food and eating is. May not include meat. Meat's a little hard one to grow. We've tried bacon seeds in a variety of ways, but we can't seem to get them to sprout out of the ground. We've even tried cuttings like bacon. We just throw that in the ground, see if it'll grow. Doesn't work. So you may have to go with some productive pets to get the protein sources in the animal kingdom if you need to, just like we do with our chickens. So there's 2 phases to the process. First, we teach you in the mastery course. There's 36 skills to master the art of agriscaping. We take you through all those in a matter of a few weeks. It's all online, so you don't have to come all the way here to Arizona to do that. If you do happen to live in Arizona, you will get a couple bonus classes of live hands-on work that you'll be able to do here. But you'll learn how to elegant edible gardening from the ground up, indoors and outdoor methods, design. You'll learn all the ponics, the hydroponics, aquaponics, vermiponics, all the ponics that are out there that you might want to grow and do things indoors. We'll teach you design for your house. We'll teach you how to design it and really work it in and really lay it out in a way that's going to make sense for you. We'll teach you about how to install stuff, especially some of these nuances about hugel culture and hill gardening and wicking beds, subterranean gardens, subterranean watering systems, all those things we teach you within the system. We teach about workflow planning too, so that you end up putting things in the right locations and set up your system so you don't do what most people do, which is binge gardening. I don't know about you, but that's what I used to do. It was the binge gardening. It was take summer break and we're going to cultivate an entire area and we're going to plant everything. And then a few months later, it's not only full of a bunch of food, it's full of a bunch of weeds and so much food that we can't eat it all ourselves. And after a very short period of time with thousands of pounds of zucchini, the neighbors start locking their doors and no longer are accepting them into their homes. And so we got an abundance of produce that we might not be able to manage very well. So it's important to get your workflow planning set up in such a way that it's as easy as 15 minutes a day. And that 15 minutes a day is the same amount of time, if not even maybe even a little less time, than you might be spending just getting dressed in the morning. And so that's an important distinction to see. It's a great meditative process that we like to also integrate in. It's a routine. When you make gardening a routine and you set it up initially with a design that makes such a routine possible for you to keep the minimal time, you'll easily be able to manage anything that you grow and produce. Little tidbit there. We'll teach you how to harvest, a lot of tricks on how to extend your harvest, how to prepare your harvest, how to set up your harvest to be preserved over an extended period of time, and how to prepare it for market if you so choose. Then there's an application phase, meaning we're going to apply the principles that we taught. We have a co-creative agriscaping project that we guide you through. We help you take what we're teaching you and literally implement it in your yard. It's a great way to get you started. We'll teach you how we got a $40,000 yard for less than $5,000 and how we've taught other people to do the same. It's a really easy to get a yard. If you do it yourself and you're willing to do the work, you can get a yard for really inexpensive. We'll also teach you how to get even less. If you need to hire a pro here and there, we'll teach you how to basically work that in so that you can really get the optimal yard, your dream yard for your dream price. Teach you how to envision it, design it, plan it, and get it done. Also how to attract help, because it's interesting what food does. When you grow food, I mean, you know, if you throw a party and you don't have food, not as many people are interested in coming. If you say, hey, we're going to have a great buffet, you tend to have a lot of people show up. Now, the same is true in a yard. Now, in my yard, my nieces and nephews often have fighting matches. You know, they almost argue about the opportunity to pick weeds in my yard because of the way we've integrated it into the system. If there happens to be a weed in the yard, then it's picked. And it's picked because that's the rule we have. If you want to eat something, and we have so many things that are of interest to eat and test out and try, that if you eat something, you have to compost something. And so we have this whole system in line. If you want to feed the chickens, well, heck, you got to go find some nice weeds that might be growing in undesirable places and go feed them to the chickens before you can go and grab an egg or feed the chickens or all those things. Very interactive yard, obviously. It draws the kids outdoors. My kids are always outside. Even in today's crazy world of technology, we can actually attract them outside. And food is usually the thing that often takes them away from the computers, right? So if food is in an interactive and active environment, you'll find they'll do the same. So we'll teach you also how to be complete with a project like this, how to manage your project teams, and get your certification. We also throw in a bunch of bonus classes because the mastery course, the way we set it up now, is more of a open university format, meaning that if you've already gone through master gardening courses, permaculture courses, you've probably learned a lot of really cool stuff. And we'll let you pass out of some of the early classes if you'd like. So you can spend your time on some other classes that you might not have normally had time for had you just gone from the very beginning. So we'll get you into the market gardening. We'll get you into farmer markets and restaurants and how to work with those. We'll talk about cake decorators and productive pets, raising kids in the garden, aquaponics, all those cool things, all available within the system if you get into the mastery program. And if you want to lead it, you can get after the leading it as well. You can go pro, consider certifications if you want to get into the industry. We'd like to send you business. No matter where you live, we'd like to help you grow, maybe a little side business for yourself. But you got to commit to that process of learning it. And we'll commit to you. If you're willing to commit to the process of learning it from a pro perspective, we're going to commit time to you to help you grow your business where you live. I've had a lot of experience doing it. Worked over a decade part-time as a business coach, and I was a pretty good one. Worked with many different varieties of businesses. So I know pretty well how to help someone start from nothing and how to align their gifts and talents to the work that they have a passion for. Make it make money. I mean, that's another interesting component. You got to make sure it makes you some money. Make sure you at least break even if it's just a hobby business for you, so it can sustain you. Maybe it can be a way for you, like it was for me early on, that it can literally pay for the garden of my dreams. And that's the way you can do it. Very many ways to do it. You can even start growing stuff today and start selling it within 7 days if you choose. So there's design, there's education, there's installation contractors, there's maintenance, a lot of different levels, harvesting. And if you go to agriscaping.com, you can actually scroll down and you'll find our application process right there online. If you already know which one you want, you can go right into the Kickstarter like we were talking about before. Jump into that Kickstarter and pledge at the level that makes sense for you. Get the app. Maybe that's the level you need. You know that you want the app and you want it to come to your area. Your vote by pledging it's your vote that lets us know that your area is ready for agriscaping. It lets us know that. And if you are going to go pro, that lets us know that agriscaping is going to grow faster where you live. And that's an important piece of the puzzle. So if you want your city to show up on our city list on agriscaping.com, you're going to need to make sure you got pros in your area. So start sharing that, get the word out. This Kickstarter ends this weekend. If you sign up for the mastery, it begins October 12th. But if you sign up today and you're part of the Kickstarter movement, you're going to start receiving access to the course materials and all the past videos in August. For some of you, may even get it earlier. So some we've already given access that has signed up through the Kickstarter. We've already given them access. So you might be one of the lucky ones that gets it even earlier than August. But bar none, you're going to get it in August if you sign up today. And that's it for today. That's the share that I've got for you. This is Agriscaping and how it's growing where you live. And hopefully it's going to keep growing because of you. And you can start sharing this opportunity by how you integrate it into your own life. And that's a very important component to all of our certified people, all of our pros. They live it. They've learned it, they've lived it, and now they're prepared to lead it. And that is the stepwise process that we go through with each of our pros, so that you know you have someone that really is living the process that they're trying to teach you or trying to help you install in your own yard. So that's it for my presentation to you. If you have questions, hopefully you've been asking them all along the way. And if you have further questions, you can find us online at agriscaping.com. You're welcome to email us through the system there. You can call our 800 number. It's 800-729-1068. That number will help direct you to the people that can give you answers to questions, whether it be on your certifications or otherwise. You guys have been great. I wish I could just unlock this whole thing and then send it to you, but apparently it's a system. This is a new system for us, so I can't really unmute everybody. We'd have this crazy barrage of conversation. So thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to sharing more with you as life goes on and keep this growing. Again, please jump on Kickstarter. You're going to see some major movement over the next couple of days because of a lot of people that have applied to become certified pros that really are going to start pledging tomorrow. We're going to make it, but we're going to need your help. I think we're still short. You can see right there on myagriscapepro.com, and you can see right there in the pledge at the top right. Take that next step, whatever next step is right for you. We'd love for you to be a part of what we're creating here with Agriscaping. Well, we're coming to the end. I don't know what else to tell you. I'll just keep repeating myself. Normally, I have the opportunity to be able to see your questions and stuff. Looks like Clark has been jumping on and answering your questions, so hopefully that's gone well for you. The Mastery Program, great question. I just saw that one pop up. So the Mastery Program is $250 only through the Kickstarter program. After the Kickstarter, it's likely going to show up at $450. live courses start at 650, and our certified educators will be able to sell and teach live courses where you live once they are certified. And so that's another cool opportunity. So it literally in your area, they range in price depending on the part of the country that you live in, but they're going to be very similar in cost, usually a little bit less than the cost of your Master Gardener program. And the other cool part is if you've taken a Master Gardening program, you've taken some of those other ones, we give you credit for that. If you've taken a permaculture course, we've given you credit for that. We've got great relationships with both Master Gardening organizations as well as your permaculture guilds. And we've gotten to know their curriculums well enough that we can actually help you check off what parts you've already learned, give you a discount, be able to jump in. So if you want to take those courses with people you have close to you, please do that. Let us know who they are. We'd love to meet up with them. We'd love to connect with them, because this option to go with Agriscaping is a very important piece of the puzzle of building that pro support system where you live. So a good system with dogs, good program for dogs. The mastery program, we do get into productive pets. And speaking in the productive pets segments, the modules about productive pets, we get into some of the details of how to protect against some of the productive pets like dogs and some specific things that we do. We had one gal, we built some pretty cool raised beds for her to keep her dog, which was actually a vegetarian, out of her garden. And it did a really good job. So there's a lot of tricks and techniques of dealing with dogs and making sure that you can still grow your edibles. I have rarely seen, if ever, nor have I even heard of a dog eating rosemary. So that's just one little tip that might help you. It's kind of a smell barriers that you can create, as well as different fencing, different raised beds, different techniques on how to grow, growing indoors in different ways, growing vertically. A lot of cool vertical growing techniques that can keep the dogs away, as long as they're not a 10-foot dog on its hind legs. We look forward to seeing all of you guys again very soon. We've got live classes that we'll be starting up again, likely in the fall. Through the winter, that will be usually free and online. So just keep in touch with us. Make sure you're on our newsletter list. Anybody that's in our Kickstarter is going to be well taken care of. We're going to give you a lot of free stuff as you go through the system, because we are going to really help make sure that you're a success with Agriscaping where you live. So thanks again. Have a great night. It is time to end according to my clock. So thanks for being here. Look forward to talking again soon.